السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. Inshallah, today we'll be starting Surah Al-Fatiha, and I will pull it up so we can get it on the screens here so you can see the notes that I have, inshallah. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Last time we talked about we had an introduction to the Quran where we talked about the different stages that the Quran went through before it even came down, or before the Prophet ﷺ himself communicated it with us through verbal process that he did, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent it down through 3 different stages before that. And so inshallah this week we're going to go ahead and start with the first surah of Al-Quran al-Kareem, and that is Surah Al-Fatiha. And before we get into the Ayaat of Surah Al-Fatiha, a little bit of background of the surah is also worthy to understand. Surah Al-Fatiha is one of the earliest Meccan surahs to be revealed, and it was revealed in its entirety. And we'll have a hadith inshallah coming up soon that tells us the event that took place when the Prophet ﷺ received this surah. It is not clear whether or not it was the first surah to be revealed in its entirety. I think last time we had the discussion that after the first few ayat of Surah Al-Alaq, then Surah Al-Mudaththir came down. So there's a difference of opinion as to whether or not which surah was the first complete surah that was revealed. Was it Surah Al-Fatiha or was it Surah Al-Mudaththir? And what seems to be the case is that Surah Al-Mudaththir was maybe revealed in parts, but Surah Al-Fatiha may be the first surah that was revealed in its entirety. Again, at that time, they were not concerned with so much of the academics. They were getting Quran, they were getting guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was a huge miracle. So it's not something that they may have kept track of at that time. But from what the scholars deduce, it may be the first surah that was revealed in its entirety. Or Surah Al-Mudaththir may be that surah. Also, Surah Al-Fatiha is unique in that the whole surah is a dua. It's a prayer that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us. Right? It's almost like He's saying, say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin, because it's made in the first person, the dua towards the end of the surah, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. We seek your help and we worship you alone, we seek your help. So it's in the first person for the speaker, for the one reading the Quran. So it is a dua, a prayer that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught us, and just some notes of guidance that what is it that we're supposed to get out of this dua. We're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance. The rest of the Quran is like the answer to the prayer. Because the very next surah, the way it starts is literally like it's just the answer to your dua, your prayer here. So you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance, and that guidance comes through being a student of the Quran, and from recognizing and acknowledging that knowledge and truth belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Also, some of the virtues of this surah, this hadith that's narrated by Abi Sa'id ibn al-Mu'alla, one of the younger companions that were with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, كنت أصلي فدعاني النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فلم أجبه قلت يا رسول الله إني كنت أصلي قال ألم يقل الله استجيبوا لله وللرسول إذا دعاكم ثم قال ألا أعلمك أعظم سورة في القرآن قبل أن تخرج من المسجد فأخذ بيدي فلما أردنا أن نخرج قلت يا رسول الله إنك قلت لأعلمنك أعظم سورة من القرآن قال الحمد لله رب العالمين هي السبع المثاني والقرآن العظيم الذي أوتيته. This is the hadith that it was narrated, and the Prophet ﷺ, he called out to Abi Sa'id al-Mu'alla in the masjid while he was praying. So he called out to him, this is an interesting part, and he called out to him and he didn't respond. So the Prophet ﷺ later said, why didn't you respond to me when I called you? And he said, Ya Rasulullah, I was praying. And he's quoted an ayah from the Quran. Even at this time, the Prophet ﷺ is teaching him something. He quoted an ayah from the Quran that says, استجيبوا لله وللرسول إذا دعاكم. Allah says that, O you who believe, give your response to Allah and to His Messenger whenever He calls you. And this is something specific to the Prophet ﷺ that even if he was going to call you and you were in your prayer, you break your prayer and you respond to the Prophet ﷺ because of Allah's command. Because of Allah's command. So he said, shall I not teach you the greatest surah in the Quran? So he wanted to teach this young Sahabi the greatest surah in the Quran. He said, sure, Ya Rasulullah, tell me what it is. And as they were walking out of the masjid, he reminded him, you were going to tell me what the greatest surah in the Quran was. So he says, it is Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Right? He refers to it by the first ayah of the surah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Praise be to Allah, the master of all creation, of all the worlds. And he says this is the one that consists of 7 repeated or repeatedly recited verses. As-Sab'ul Mathani, one of the names of the surah, as you'll see. And it is the magnificent Quran which was given to me. So the Prophet ﷺ here himself is referring to this surah as the greatest surah in the Quran. So we have the greatest ayah in the Quran, which is Ayatul Kursi, and then we have the greatest surah in the Quran, which is the Surah Al-Fatiha. And we also have Ismullah Al-A'zam, the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is the greatest name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is probably the name Allah itself, right? But so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself chose certain things to be, of a higher reward with regard to the one reading it and the one studying it than other things. All of the Quran is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of it is perfect and all of it is good. But for us, the guidance that we get from Al-Fatiha, right, there's a special thing about Al-Fatiha in and of itself. Another virtue, another hadith. This is the one, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu reported that while Jibreel was sitting with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he heard a creaking sound above him, like a door open. So he lifted his head and he said, Jibreel said, this is a gate opened in the heaven today, which has never been opened before. Then when an angel descended through it, he said, this is an angel who came down to the earth, who had never come down to the earth before. The angel greeted the Prophet ﷺ. He said, Assalamu alaikum, and then he said, Abshir bi nurayn, that rejoice in 2 lights given to you, which have not been given to any prophet before you. Al-Fatihatul Kitab, which is a name for Surah Al-Fatiha, and the concluding verses of Surah Al-Baqarah, the one I read in Salat al-Maghrib, the first rak'ah, the last verses of Surah Al-Baqarah. You will never recite a letter from them, or for which you will not be given a reward. Right? You will recite these letters, and you will be given what you are asking for. So we know that even the way that this surah came down was revealed was very unique. Right? It was very unique. The angel came down with the surah, and he came down with the last verses of Surah Al-Baqarah as well. And we already talked about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored the Quran by descending it down in various ways, right? Again, Surah Al-Fatiha specifically, a gate that's never been opened from the skies, an angel that's never been sent down to the earth, right? It's a very, very special gift. You can imagine, when you're sending somebody to give your neighbor this nice cake that you baked. You're not going to send your child that's clumsy and he's going to go in there with it. You're going to pick the best person. You're going to pick someone who's going to make a mark, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also honored this surah of the Quran by revealing it through one of the angels, bringing it down, that had never come down to the earth before. Another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu said that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, when the Imam says, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ, the last ayah of Surah Al-Fatiha, not the way of those who earned your anger, nor of those who went astray, say, قُولُوا آمين, say Ameen. For the angels say Ameen, and the Imam says Ameen. And if a person's Ameen, saying Ameen coincides, happens at the same time that the angels are saying Ameen, غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِهِ, his previous sins will be forgiven. His previous sins will be forgiven. SubhanAllah, just for saying Ameen and hoping that you're getting it at the time with the angels. Alhamdulillah, we pray 5 times a day, and we have a good chance, right, throughout our life at least getting it once. Maybe once in a lifetime we'll hit the Ameen right when the angels are saying it. But the reward for that is you get the forgiveness of your previous sins. Again, the Prophet ﷺ, and Allah is giving us a gift. He's urging us to be focused in our salah. Listen to the Imam when he's saying the Ameen. Whether or not you say the Ameen out loud, we'll discuss the fiqh issues of Surah Al-Fatiha when we get to the end of Surah Al-Fatiha, inshallah. We'll talk about some of the fiqh of the surah. Other names of the surah, interestingly enough, many surahs in the Quran have more than one name. Right? Many surahs, Surah Al-Dahr, Surah Al-Insan, right? Things like that. Many of them have more than one name. Surah Al-Fatiha, again being a special surah that it is, the ulama, the scholars have actually mentioned lots of names for the surah. At least 13 names of the surah. So some scholars that have mentioned more, 18, 27, so on and so forth. But I wanted to share with you some of these names, and these names even help you understand what this surah is all about. What is so special about this surah that it's been given all these different names. So the first of these names is Fatihatul Kitab, which basically means the opening of the book. right? It's the first surah that was written in the Mus'haf, in the scripture that the companions compiled, and the way the Prophet ﷺ would always recite it in every rak'ah of the salah, of the prayer. So it's always like an opening, right? We always use it like an opening. So that's why it's called Fatihatul Kitab. It's called Ummul Quran, or Ummul Quran, or Asasul Quran. I think that's one of the other names. Ummul Quran. Literally means in Arabic that it's used to refer to the mother, right? But it also means the foundation of something, right? Or that one thing that everybody gathers under. So that banner that they would carry, right? That would signify that all of you have to gather here for the battle or whatever. It was called, referred to as as well, meaning that something that everybody can gather under, or the foundation of the Quran. It's also called Kitab. The surah is also called Al-Kanz, the treasure, which is a very beautiful name, right? This surah is in and of itself a treasure. The more you recite it, the more you study it, and there's a reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to repeat the surah over and over again. At least 17 times a day, we read the surah in the salah. So it's called the Kanz, the treasure. It's also called Al-Wafiyah. Al-Wafiyah means the one that is complete, or that consists of everything. And that's because the scholars, they have basically deduced that this surah itself is like a summary of the entire Quran. The surah itself is a summary of the entire Quran. Any parts of the Quran, you can always find an ayah in Surah Al-Fatiha that would fall under the basic categories of one of these ayat in the surah. It's also called Alhamd because of the first word in the surah, Alhamdulillah, all the praise be to Allah. It's called As-Salah, and Allah Himself called it As-Salah in the Hadith Qudsi. In a Hadith the Prophet narrates from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly. He calls it As-Salah, the prayer. Right? And that Hadith is, inshallah, we're going to get to it later. It's called As-Sab' al-Mathani, as in the Hadith that came, the 7 oft-repeated verses. The 7 often repeated ayat. Because we repeat them 17 times a day, we read it all the time in every single salah. It's called As-Shifa, the cure, and there's a narration from one of the companions, that he actually used it to cure somebody, and he wasn't quite sure himself. So they were gone somewhere, a few of the companions. They hadn't been taught by the Prophet ﷺ that this surah could be used to cure somebody, and they were in a place where a woman came to them and said, all of our men are gone, and the leader of our tribe is fallen sick. So is there any one of you that knows anything of ruqya? Ruqya means like kind of a cure that they would do with words. So one of them said, yeah, I know something, I can do something. And they were going to get food in exchange for it, right? So they were hungry. So he says, yeah, I know something. So he went and he read Surah Al-Fatiha, and he did ruqya with Al-Fatiha, and the person was cured. He was stung or bitten by a snake or something like that, or a scorpion or a snake. So he was cured. And they said, how did you know that Al-Fatiha can be used for ruqya? Did you used to do this before? He was like, no, but I thought, it's the Quran of Allah, and use it. So when they went back to the Prophet ﷺ, they told him about it, and they had brought the sheep that they were given, right, as a reward for curing that person. And so they weren't sure. They said, we're not going to touch the sheep until we know the Prophet ﷺ says that, this is okay for us to touch the sheep because what we did was right. And the Prophet ﷺ himself said, how did you know that Al-Fatiha was going to be good for the ruqya, that was going to be a cure? And he said, split the sheep among you and give me a share as well, right? Because he taught them the Fatiha. So give me a share of the sheep as well. It's called Al-Kafiya, the sufficient, because the name is pretty self-explanatory. It's called Al-Asas, the foundation. As-Su'al, the question, because you're asking Allah, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. You're asking Allah, guide us to the straight path. So it's called As-Su'al. It's also called As-Shukr, which is another way of referring to praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we'll see. And it's called Ad-Du'a. Right? Ad-Du'a, also As-Salah, mean the same thing, the prayer, because it is a prayer that we make to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first thing that we get to when we talk about Al-Fatiha is what is something that's known as Al-Isti'aadha. Al-Isti'aadha is the name for the phrase we say, A'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim. This is the name of the phrase. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is called the Basmalah, right? Alhamdulillah is called Alhamdulillah. These things have names. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah is called Al-Hawqala, right? And so on and so forth. So this is called Al-Isti'aadha, which means to say, A'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim, which literally means, I seek refuge or protection in Allah from the cursed shaitan. From the cursed shaitan, the one who is far away from the mercy of Allah, to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam al-Razi in his Tafsir, he says, the Isti'aadha purifies the heart from anything that prevents one from being absorbed in the remembrance of Allah, and the Basmalah focuses one's heart on the grand status of Allah. So this is the goal. When you're reading A'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, this is what should be in your mind. This is what's supposed to be happening. You're seeking refuge in Allah from shaitan the accursed. We know what it means. But what is that? How does that manifest itself? you're actually protecting yourself from shaitan coming and trying to whisper things to you in your salah, or to be, bothering you in your salah, or bother you when you're reading the Quran, or when you say this phrase and you go to do anything else, right? And we'll see how you use this phrase in other places. So again, just saying it doesn't work. Being cognizant, understanding what it is that you're doing, having a focused mind, this is how you get khushu' in your salah as well, right? Having this humility in your salah, this focus in your salah, by focusing on what you're saying and realizing what's happening as a result. So, and this is a way you convince yourself, I said this, that's it, I'm good. The shaitan is going to stay away from me. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. I've protected myself from shaitan. This is what you're doing when you're saying this phrase. And this has to be in your mind. So you don't just say it out of habit, but you keep it in your mind what it is that you're saying. And he says that the Basmalah, the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, it focuses your heart on the grand status of Allah. Because Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, the most merciful, right? The especially merciful. The characteristics of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You seek refuge in shaitan, and now you focus on Allah. You're focusing on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. So while you can also see this, how this works in your salah, it's also good for other uses as well. Imam Al-Jazairi in his Tafsir, he says, I seek refuge in Allah from the curse of shaitan, that he interferes in my reading and understanding of the Quran. It's kind of an incomplete sentence. Just like Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is also an incomplete sentence. And in Arabic, when there are incomplete sentences like this, it means that there is something, you're filling the gap with something that you're doing. So when you're reading Quran and you say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, you're seeking refuge in Allah from shaitan, from interfering in your reading. When you're praying, you mean, I'm seeking refuge from interfering in my praying. Right? When you're angry, you're saying, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, you're seeking Allah's protection from shaitan, fueling my anger. Right? All of these things, they depend, they're incomplete sentences and they're filled by whatever it is that you're doing. Same thing with the Basmalah, the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Imam Ibn Kathir in his Tafsir mentions that Allah commands us to show ihsan towards human enemies, because their attitudes can be changed. Shaitan, however, is an enemy for life, so all we can do is seek Allah's protection from his evil. This is an interesting point that he brings up, that the shayateen from the humankind, right? Evil people, they can always be changed. Their attitudes can be changed. If you treat them in a nice way, you can, change people's attitudes and their minds. But shaitan, you can't change his attitude and his mind, because he's a sworn enemy. Inna shaytana lakum aduwwun mubin. He is a clear enemy to you, sworn enemy to you. So all you can do with shaitan is seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So don't get this idea that I'm going to go and convince shaitan that, if I just talk to shaitan, maybe he'll change his mind, right? Just because many of us have these thoughts. Because when shaitan comes to us with these whispers, there's no point arguing back, right? Because you just seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's all that we can do, because he is a sworn enemy to us. Other places that you can use the Isti'aadha besides just the salah or reading of the Quran, in moments of fear, whenever you're fearful, whenever you're angry, which is really important that you seek refuge in shaitan, because he wants to fuel your anger, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to control our rage and our anger. When you're feeling anxious or anxiety, or you're feeling depressed, seek refuge in shaitan. One of the goals of shaitan is also to make you feel hopeless. Make you feel hopeless in the mercy of Allah. Make you feel hopeless that you're ever, good at something, that you're worth something. All of these feelings are fueled by shaitan. So saying, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, and moving on. Right? It's important that when you say that, you make yourself move on from that position, and then you will get the benefit of that. And also evil suggestions when they come to you. Right? Whenever an evil suggestion comes to you from shaitan, فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. That's what Allah says in the Quran, فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ إِنَّهُ هُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. He is the one who hears everything, and he knows everything. So you seek refuge in Allah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come to your rescue, inshallah. The Basmalah then. The Basmalah is the saying, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, which in just plain English means in the name of Allah, the Rahman, the Rahim, right? And again, you see how it's an incomplete sentence. In the name of Allah, what? Right? So if you're reading Quran in the name of Allah, it means I'm reading the Quran. If you're praying your salah in the name of Allah, I pray. Right? If you're eating in the name of Allah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, I'm going to eat. Right? Whatever it is you're doing, it fills in that sentence. It fills in that gap. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also left it very general. Rahman and Rahim, both of these words mean the merciful. Right? Both of these come from the word Rahma, which means mercy, and both refer to the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in different ways. So Rahman is the one who shows mercy to all of his creation, regardless whether they believe or they don't believe. Rahman, and this is probably something, if you attended Hafiz Ahmad Ali's lectures on the names and attributes of Allah, then he covered this as well. So I'm not going to go too deep into this. And Rahim is the one who shows mercy specifically to the believers. وَكَانَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَحِيمًا. That's what Allah says in the Quran, that Allah is to the believers specifically Rahiman. He is Rahim. This mode of mercy is only for the believers. And the way the sentence is structured in Arabic limits it only to the believers. So Rahman, He's mercy to everyone. He gives food, protection to everyone, regardless whether or not they believe or they don't believe. But Rahim, this special mercy from Allah that especially will manifest itself on the day of judgment, this belongs only to the believers. So this is the phrase Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and this should help you focus now on what you're doing, right? You're seeking refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're calling out to Him by His characteristic of mercy. Mentioning the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, makes us think about what we're going to do, and starting with Allah's name is a way to seek blessing. That's what the Prophet ﷺ said, كُلُّ أَمْرٍ ذِي بَالٍ لَا يَبْدَأُ بِبِسْمِ اللَّهِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ فَهُوَ أَبْتَرُ. That every matter that does not begin with the name of Allah, right, it is like it is cut off. It is cut off from any reward that you could benefit from it. So before you eat, you say Bismillah. Before you drink, anything you do, you say Bismillah. And when you get into that habit, and you're about to do something wrong, and the words Bismillah come out of your mouth, that's a great reminder, right? You end up reminding yourself. If you have a habit of saying Bismillah before anything, you end up reminding yourself that, wait a minute, do I really want to do this thing in the name of Allah? If I don't want to do it in the name of Allah, is it even something that I should be doing in the first place? So getting into the habit of saying Bismillah before anything, you end up reminding yourself when you're doing something wrong, and you're going to think twice about what it is that you're about to do. This is also a fiqh issue, but I'm going to include it here. The rest of the fiqh, or the legal opinions, we'll talk about towards the end of the surah whenever we get to it. But is the phrase Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim an ayah of Surah Al-Fatiha, or is it not? This is something the scholars have disagreed about, right? And it's important to know this. Why? Because reading Surah Al-Fatiha in your salah is mandatory, right? You have to read Surah Al-Fatiha in your salah. So if Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is an ayah, then you have to read it. If it's not an ayah, then you don't have to read it, and you just start with Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. So basically, it's broken down into two camps. Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah, his school of thought says, yes, it is an ayah of the Quran. And most of the mushafs we'll see will have it as the number one right after the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, only for Surah Al-Fatiha, to mark that it's the first ayah of the Quran. The Imams Malik, Abu Hanifa, and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, they said no. But even though within the schools of thought there's disagreement, generally their school of thought says no, it's not an ayah of Surah Al-Fatiha, and the first ayah is Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. So if you follow any one of these schools, alhamdulillah, you know which one to go for, right? If you don't, inshallah, the better opinion is that it is not an ayah of Surah Al-Fatiha because of some very clear hadith. The Prophet ﷺ used to refer to the surahs by their first ayahs, right? So he would call Surah Al-Mulk, Tabaraka alladhi biyadihi al-mulk, right? So he called Surah Al-Fatiha, in the hadith we had as well, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, the greatest surah in the Quran. He referred to it by the first ayah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. There's another hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ narrates from Allah, that Allah says, I have divided this surah, as-salah, Surah Al-Fatiha, between me and my slave into two halves, right? So when the slave says, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, that's how the hadith starts, right? So when the slave says the first ayah, which is Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and then the hadith goes on, so that these hadith kind of support the opinion that it is not an ayah of Surah Al-Fatiha. However, it is a sunnah, it is mustahab in all schools of thought that before you start recitation, you say A'udhu Billah and you say Bismillah before every surah. So there's no reason to leave it off, right? But this is something that's an interesting point. It's kind of an academic point about the tafsir of this ayah. Inshallah, before I kind of get into, I'll maybe spend 10 more minutes, inshallah. I'll try to do just the first 3 ayat if I can. But if there are any questions that anybody has until this point, or discussion or comments, then please go ahead and bring them up. Because before we move on to the first ayah, if there's anything that needs clarification or questions.
Just a quick question. What
Yes.
is order of Nuzul al-Fatiha? It's not the first surah that came, right?
Yeah, so it's not the first surah, it's not the one which is, there's a disagreement whether or not it's the first complete surah that was revealed, or not the first complete surah. So a lot of the scholars say it was the first complete surah, but it's not clear when it came. Either it came before Al-Mudaththir or after Al-Mudaththir. Al-Mudaththir was probably the second surah, most likely, because what we know for sure is the first ayat were the ayat of Surah Al-Alaq, the first 5 ayat. Then there was a long period where nothing came. And then we know that Surah Al-Mudaththir came, because the Prophet again, he saw the angel Jibreel, he covered himself. So Allah revealed, Ya ayyuhal mudaththir, oh, the one who's covered up. So we know these two are probably the first 2 surahs that came. Surah Al-Fatiha came very early in the Meccan period. So it may be that it was the next one, but again, it's a difference of opinion whether or not it was the first complete surah that was revealed or not. But we don't know exactly in the tartib. There may be some guesswork done by the scholars, but it's not 100% sure whether it's the 3rd or 4th. But most likely it's not the first or the second that was revealed.
So what determines the orders of surahs in the Quran? I mean, why is it the first one?
That's the way the Prophet ﷺ himself compiled the Quran. He commanded it to be compiled in this specific way. But we talked about that in the first one. It's on the first one is online. You can watch it. We talked about the way they arranged the Quran and why they did that. But that was basically by the command of the Prophet ﷺ. And it also shows its miracle that even though they were revealed at different times, when they compiled it in a different way, it still makes sense when you read it from beginning to end. So that's the miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that no human being can perform this task where he goes through his life saying different things and then 23 years later compiles it, and then it still makes sense in a different way than it actually did. So this is it. Any other questions? Yes, brother.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. You say that in the name of Allah. That's
Yes.
the translation we have. But what that actually means, in the name of Allah.
Yeah, it's an incomplete sentence. So Bismillah, you're saying in the name of Allah, I'm doing this. So whatever it is you're doing, that completes the sentence.
That I understood.
Yeah.
But what it means that in the name of Allah. Now I understand that.
What do you mean in the name of Allah? Okay. So basically you're saying that I'm starting this act with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're reminding yourself who is the one responsible, who is the one watching, who you're responsible to in the akhirah. Right? So in everything that you do, you're basically reminding yourself of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And like I said, if you make this a habit, what ends up happening is even if you're about to do something wrong, you're supposed to, anything you start, you say Bismillah. So you have to do something wrong and you say Bismillah, it'll make you think twice. Right? Wait a minute. Should I really be doing this in the name of Allah, or should I not be doing this in the name of Allah? So you're reminding yourself that whatever it is I'm doing it in the name of Allah. Allah is the one that has guided me to do this. He is the one that's made me able to do this. Whatever it is, and again, this is where you personalize it now. This is where you think about, and it's what's called tadabbur. Allah asks us to ponder over the Quran, right? A lot of times, some of these answers are really personal, right? What does that mean to me in the name of Allah? I'm about to do something, right? So I'm giving you one option that it's reminding you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it may have a more deeper meaning with you when you actually practice it and you see, what kind of effect it actually has on your spiritual life. So again, it's something experimental. Everything is experimental. You have to try it out, do it, make it a habit, and then you'll really see, what the meaning it is for you that it brings out, inshallah. Any other questions from the sister side? Yes, ma'am.
So in the beginning of lecture, you said about the Sahaba, that when your Prophet calls for you, you reply to him.
Yes.
Yeah. So that ruling came just for that particular incident, or is that applied to us today?
No, it's very general. So the rulings in the Quran are very general, but some of them are specific to the Prophet ﷺ. So this one says, whenever Allah and His Messenger call upon you, you respond to them. Right? So for us, it means whenever you read an ayah of the Quran or you hear a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that's commanding you to do something, Allah is calling you, right? Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, or you who believe. Right? Allah is calling you, then you have to respond. You have to respond. So all of the obligations or the commands in the Quran, a command gives rise to an obligation. So you're obligated to now to respond to that command. But even in the literal sense, for the Sahaba, since they were with the Prophet ﷺ, literally when he called them, they would have to respond. So it has that literal meaning for them, and for us it has the extended meaning of the Quran and Sunnah. These are if they're calling out to us, then we have to respond. Yeah, good questions. Anything else, inshallah? Good questions? Okay, inshallah. Let's go up maybe 5 more minutes, inshallah, we'll open it up. We might not finish all the first 3 ayat, we'll see, inshallah. So the first ayah of the Quran, arguably, right, is Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And loosely it means all praise belongs to Allah. Alhamd being the word praise, Lillahi belongs to Allah. Rabbil Alameen, master of all creation. Now I'm not going to go to a word by word, detailed, in-depth type of thing, because we already have somebody that's really good at that. Shaykh Numan Ali Khan is really good at that. If you really want that, you can watch his lectures online. I'm going to go kind of through the general meaning of the ayah, and then some points of kind of what these words actually mean, and the lessons we can draw from them. So I'm not going to go too in depth into each word, inshallah. But Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, all praise belongs to Allah, the master of all creation. And I purposely translated it this way. It might be different than what you see in other translations of the Quran, which is the Lord of the worlds, right? And that's a statement that a lot of people find that makes absolutely no sense. What does it mean, Lord of the worlds, right? Worlds is kind of a very not an understood concept that we have of worlds that we're having. But inshallah, it makes sense in a bit. So Alhamd. Hamd is obviously the word that means praise. And there are four total words, at least four words in the Arabic language that are used for praise. And the reasons the Mufassirin, the scholars of Quranic Tafsir, they talk about the different words is so you can understand the word Allah used better. Right? Why did Allah use the word Alhamd? instead of al-thana or al-shukr or al-madh? Why did he use al-hamd specifically? So al-hamd, it means that when you describe something or someone in a beautiful manner, right? That's hamd. And we know that those of us that speak Urdu, we know that hamd is usually a praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's like a poetry that's done in praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So describing someone or something in a beautiful manner is called hamd. And praising someone who provides you benefit, or praising them because of their status, because of who they are, is called hamd. Right? So not necessarily they do something for you, but because of who they are, you praise them. Whether they did something for you, whether they didn't do anything for you. Because of who they are, you praise them, that is called al-hamd. So what it really means is that whether you think Allah has done anything for you or not, it doesn't matter. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is praised because of who He is. Because of who, regardless of what you think about Him, because of who He is praised. And it doesn't matter what you feel about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is definitely praised. Other words are shukr. Shukr means thanks. When you say, shukriya or shukran. So you're saying thank you, you're being grateful. And this is a word that's used when someone does something to you specifically, you reply to them by showing gratefulness. That's what a shukr means. Madh is a praise that's given for things that are even out of your control. So the scholars they give an example that you may praise somebody because he has a beautiful face, right? Or she has a beautiful face, right? You may praise somebody because of the way they look. But that's not in their control. That's not something they made happen, unless they're like kicking on makeup or something, right? But that's not something they made happen. The way they look is the way is just the nature, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them this way. You may praise a tree because of the way it looks, but the tree has nothing to do with it, right? So you praise things for things that are out of the thing that you're praising's control, if that makes any sense, right? Then that's called madh. That's called praise in that sense. And thana is basically constant praise. When you praise something over and over and over again, it's called thana. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word hamd, which is very specific. That it is praised in a beautiful manner, all types of praise, the best types of praise, and He deserves the praise because of who He is. Because of who He is, right? And this is something which is completely in His control. So these are not things which are out of Allah's control. Allah Azza wa Jal is who He is, and He is the master of all creation, and therefore He deserves all this praise. And the name Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the name Allah itself, is not a name that has a root in the Arabic language, though some grammarians disagree. The majority opinion is it's not a name that has a root in the Arabic language. So it's a name by itself. And that's why this name cannot be twisted and turned in other ways. It can't be morphed like other Arabic words can be morphed. And no one else can take this title that's specifically reserved for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alhamdulillah, even in the Arabic language, it's something that's been used for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He says, Rabb al-Alameen. Rabb is defined by four basic things. The one who owns something, the one who takes care of or nurtures something, the one who improves the condition of something by taking care of it, and the master who is to be obeyed. And these are all meanings that the Arabs use the word Rabb with as well. But they never use the word Rabb for anyone, just that word. They always made it a compound phrase. So Rabbud Dar, the master or the owner of the house, right? Rabbud Dukan, or the master of the shop, right? Rabbu Shay, the master or the owner of something. But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He can use it for Himself, just the word Rabb. And it's one of those names that's reserved for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it helps explain what it means when you say Rabb al-Alameen. That when Allah is the Rabb, what does that mean? It means He owns everything. Because al-Alameen, we'll see what it means in a second. But Rabb, He owns everything. He's in control of everything. He takes care of everything. He's the master of everything. Right? All of these meanings under the word Rabb. So now when you're reading this surah, right, you read the first ayah of this surah, you're kind of putting yourself in check. Right? Alhamdulillah, every kind of praise belongs to Allah, because anything that has praise in it of itself, anything that's worthy of praise, all of that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rabb al-Alameen, the one who owns everything, nurtures everything, takes care of everything. And if you just start listing the things that exist in this world, just think about it. If you were to start making a list of things that exist just on this planet Earth, how long would it take you to complete that list? Right? How long would it take you to finish that? Writing about every single thing that exists, living, non-living thing that exists on this earth. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Rabbul Alameen of everything that exists. And Al-Alameen basically means the entire creation besides Allah. That's what Al-Alameen means. The entire creation besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is uncreated, everything else is created, therefore everything that's created is an alam, is a world. That's what you get translation, right? Or a kingdom. And when we say kingdom, we can understand it in English, because we have the kingdom of the animals, we have the kingdom of plants, we have the kingdom of, all these, the scientific way to break it up, right? So these are all different types of worlds that exist. And everything besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is an alam. And He is the master, owner, nurturer of everything else besides Him, right? Everything else besides Him that exists, He is the one that owns it. So if you just start listing the things that are on this earth, you will probably spend the rest of your life maybe writing down, because we're discovering new things every day. We're coming up with new things, new species, new plants, and all this kind of stuff we're coming up with, new theories, new chemicals, molecules, whatever it is that we're coming up with all the time. And then you expand that to go beyond this planet, and then you expand that to go beyond the world that we can even see, because we've only seen a part of what already exists. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control, He owns, and He is nurturing, taking care of all these things. Taking care of all these things. Imam al-Razi, rahimahullah, in his tafsir, he talks about, if you were just to think about your own body, and from morning to night, the things that make your body function the way it functions, all the things that are going on inside, he said there are more than 10,000 examples you could come up with of why you have to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just from yourself, just by looking at yourself. And so this is just us, what's happening inside of us, right? Every little thing that's happening, what we're breathing involuntarily, alhamdulillah, right? If that stopped, that function stopped, that's it. Our brains are thinking, taking in information, alhamdulillah, right? We're able to walk, we're able to move, we're able to, take care of our needs by ourselves, alhamdulillah. Right? These are all things we should be praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for. وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ فَلَا تُحْصُوهَا. As Allah says, if you were to count the blessings of Allah, you would never be able to count it. You would never be able to stop counting. And this is why we just say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. This phrase covers everything. Praise be to Allah, the Lord of everything that exists, every single thing that happens. He is the owner of it, He takes care of it, and we praise Him for that. Shaykh Mulana Maududi, he mentions that this surah is also a dua, like we mentioned before, and this opening ayah teaches us how to start our prayers. How to start our prayers. So just this ayah alone, Allah is teaching us, if you want to call out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how should you start? Should you just, go and say, Ya Allah, I need this, I need that, make it happen, thank you, and then on your way, right? Or is there a process, is there a formality that you have to fulfill? And before you're asking, Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim, before you say, guide us to the straight path, you have this praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that's taking place. And so this is what, Allah is teaching us. How should you make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Start by praising Him. Start by showing, appreciation, being grateful to Him for all that He's done for you. And the sunnah of Rasulullah adds on that you also send peace and blessings upon the Prophet ﷺ. So you say Alhamdulillah. Simply, you can start your dua by saying Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, using this ayah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala nabiyyina Muhammad. Right? And may peace and blessings be upon our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Just that phrase, praising Allah, sending peace and blessings upon the Prophet. Then you ask for what you want to ask for. Then at the end of your dua, the same thing. You praise Allah and you send peace and blessings upon the Prophet ﷺ. This is a dua that has power. By the words that you say, this dua has power. Because you've praised Allah. When you praise Allah, you're getting good deeds, you're wiping out your sins. And so when you're asking for something, you're asking, by being forgiven. You're asking by bringing yourself closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And by sending peace and blessings on His messenger, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves people to send peace and blessings upon His final messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So you do that, you're purifying yourself before you ask. So all of these things, they make your dua, go up a notch in the level of being accepted. Inshallah, I think we'll stop here since kind of time is gone. I don't want to go too long talking about myself. But I wanted to get just through Malik Yawmiddin, but inshallah that's, actually, if I have your permission, it's only 2 more slides. If I have your permission, is that okay?
Yes.
Inshallah, okay. So Alhamdulillah, I skipped Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim because we talked about it when we talked about the Basmalah, right? We talked about Bismillah Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. What does that mean? So again, that part is repeated because you're praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the second ayah of the surah, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. And in the third ayah, arguably, Maliki Yawmiddin, the owner of the day of reckoning or the day of judgment. Now it's really important to understand that this surah, you might hear it, those of you that are from different countries as well, probably heard, instead of Maliki Yawmiddin, you heard Maliki Yawmiddin. So there are different variant recitations of the Quran. Right? And the Quran even is written in a way that you can recite it in these various recitations. And the Mufassirin, the scholars of Tafsir, they always hear in this surah, even if they're just making Tafsir of just one of the recitations, they include this second recitation because it gives a deeper meaning to what it is you're saying. So Malik Yawmiddin, Malik is someone who is an owner of something, and when you own something, you have the right to do whatever it is you want to do with whatever it is that you own. This is a concept we have to understand about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are some sayings from some of the Sahaba which people don't understand, they find it tough to understand. But one of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they said that if Allah was to punish a righteous person, right, and reward a sinner, then that would be considered just. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the owner of everything. He does whatever He wants with His ownership. Right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us He's not going to be unjust to anybody. He's going to be just. He's going to reward those who do good, and He's going to punish those who do bad. But when you're the owner of something, you do whatever it is that you want with what you own. And we just said, Rabbil Alameen. What is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns? He owns everything. Everything that there is, He owns it. So it means He can do whatever He wants with anything that He owns. Maliki Yawmiddin, the other recitation, Malik is the word used for king. Right? A king is someone who has authority, someone who commands, someone who can give, someone who can prevent. And all of this He does without anyone to oppose it. So this is the meaning of the word Malik. Someone who does this, who commands, who prohibits, who prevents, who gives gifts, whatever He wants to do. And there is no one to oppose Him. There's no one to oppose Him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the owner of everything. He does whatever He wants. He gives to whoever He wills. He takes away from whoever He wills. Right? تُؤْتِي مَنْ تَشَاءُ تُؤْتِي الْمُلْكَ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتَنْزِعُ الْمُلْكَ مِمَّنْ تَشَاءُ. As Allah says in the Quran, He gives the kingdom or authority in this world to whoever He wants, and He takes away from whoever He wants. وَتُعِزُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُذِلُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ. And you give honor to whoever you want, and you humiliate whoever you want. That's what Allah says in the Quran. Right? He does whatever He wants. And He is not opposed in that one bit. Even if anybody thinks he can oppose Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's not going to oppose Him. So Allah has this much, this is the power and the grandeur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He's Maliki Yawmiddin, the day of reckoning. Right? And deen literally has different meanings in the Quran as well. So deen is something we use to refer to as a way of life or religion. But linguistically it also means to take accountability or to take account. Hisab or jaza or compensation. Right? That also is, that's why the word dain, which means loan, comes from as well. The same root. Dain, which means to take a loan, you owe somebody something. It comes from the word for account or accountability. So He's the master of the day of accountability. Meaning on that day, the only one that's going to judge you is going to be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the only one that's going to have, who's going to tell you where you're going to go, what you're going to do. The only one, لا يتكلمون, no one's going to speak unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him, permission. So Allah Azza wa Jalla has complete authority. Complete authority. And the scholars say, why did Allah say Rabbil Alameen and then Malik Yawmiddin? Right? Rabbil Alameen, He's the owner of everything that exists besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that covers everything. So why did He specifically say Malik Yawmiddin? And that's because when we think of Rabbil Alameen, we automatically go towards the material, right? Allah is the owner of the earth, the trees, the soul, the person, the car I have, the house I have, the wealth I have. All of that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns. But Allah is reminding us He's also Malik Yawmiddin. Don't forget about the Yawmiddin, the day that comes after. And the connection with this ayah and the ayah before it, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. The most merciful, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful to the believers. And right after that He says, Malik Yawmiddin. He's reminding you of the day of judgment. So Mulana Mawludi mentioned a good point. He says, don't get your hopes up so high that Allah is so merciful that you forget that you're going to be held accountable. Right? But at the same time, don't become hopeless that you're not going to get Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. Allah Azza wa Jalla always maintains His balance. So He's saying Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim twice. Bismillah Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. You're feeling good, right? He's the master of everything. He's the most merciful. But Malik Yawmiddin. He's also very, very just. And He'll hold you accountable for what it is that you do. And that is the meaning of Maliki Yawmiddin. Just some lessons from these ayat, the first three ayat, inshallah, this will be the last thing we talk about. I'll just list these. But what I encourage everyone to do is to kind of internalize these points. Inshallah, this will be up online as well so you can review it. But internalize what these ayat mean and then do this act that Allah wants us to do of tadabbur, of tafakkur. Allah wants us to now ponder these ayat. He wants us to think deeply about them ourselves. And the reason you think deeply about them yourselves is once you understand what they mean, once you understand what the context is, it gives you a very personal meaning when you go back and you ponder over these ayat. Right? What does it mean to you that Allah is Rabbul Alameen? What does it mean to you that all praise belongs to Allah? What does it mean to you that Allah is most merciful for other people, merciful for the believers specifically? What does it mean to you that He's Maliki Yawmiddin? All of these things that you go and you do a deeper thought process of yourself because Allah wants us to think. Right? أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Will they not ponder over this Quran? Will they not think over this Quran? أَمْ عَلَى الْقُلُوبِ أَقْفَالُهَا. Or are there locks on their hearts? That's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes it. Why wouldn't you want to ponder over this Quran? Is there a lock on your heart that's preventing you from doing this? There's no lock. It's just we don't go back and do this properly. And when you do this, you engage with the Quran in this level, then you derive these lessons. These lessons are nothing more than scholars thinking about these ayat and then coming up with these lessons. So this is not something that's reserved only for scholars. Yes, we want to make sure we have the correct understanding of the ayah, the context of the ayah, and we want to make sure that we're in line with the overall principles of the religion. But this is why you go back and you think, and you can derive lessons as well. And then you have this question and answer where you ask, you can come back and always discuss. So if you come up with a wrong conclusion, you can get corrected. Don't be afraid of making mistakes, but think about the ayat of the Quran. And some of the points that the scholars they derive is that number one, we all need Allah's protection from shaitan. We should all start our any affairs with Bismillah, the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as it gives us reward, it puts barakah, blessings in it. Allah is teaching us how to make dua by praising Allah, sending peace and blessings upon the Prophet. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves praise. This is one of the things that the scholars have talked about. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves to be praised, and that's why they say it's almost like in the surah he's saying, قُلْ alhamdulillah. He's saying, say alhamdulillah rabbil alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim maliki yawmiddin. When he's teaching you how to make dua to him, he's showing you that he loves the praise that you get because of his status, because he is Rabbil Alameen, because he is Rahman Rahim, because he is Maliki Yawmiddin. He deserves praise. He deserves your praise and he loves the praise. And Allah is merciful, yet he's also just. So like we said before, don't get your hopes up too high where you're like, you know what, he's going to forgive me for everything. Let me just do whatever it is I want. That's one camp. That's a religion that exists, by the way. That does whatever it is they want to do because, oh, he will be forgiven. That's one religion. And then there's another religion that feels is completely hopeless and things like that as well. So inshallah we'll stop here. If there's any questions or points of discussion or comments anybody wants to make, inshallah, take them. Going once, going twice.
I
Yeah.
heard one.
So, sorry.
I heard one Sheikh Zaman when he said, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. And Allah is saying that He Rabb of all the creation. Sheikh Zaman said that there is also a warning here that Allah is Rabb of all the creation.
Yeah.
So even being a Muslim, in being just with others, we have to remember
Beautiful point.
that they are for Allah, they are Rabb too.
Beautiful point.
So,
All these creations belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so therefore the way you behave with His creation,
yeah,
beautiful
that's
point.
it.
Alhamdulillah. It's a beautiful point. Beautiful reminder. Alhamdulillah. It's a point. Brother Michael, let's go first.
So, you mentioned, alhamdulillah, how Lafdul Jalala is its own name, and it's the one name that is not like Basmalah. It's Lafdul Jalala. And one thing unique about it, that it's the only name that it cannot be feminine or masculine.
Yes.
And it cannot be pluralized. It's only singular. There's only one way to say Allah. And there's no plurals to it, and there's no feminine form of it. Like there's Aziz and there's Aziza and there's Latif and Latifa, but there's Allah and Allah.
It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the only reason we use the pronoun huwa is grammatically because, grammatically the way it fits into the language, you can use the word huwa. That's how I've heard scholars explain it. Why the masculine pronoun is used is because words in the Arabic language are either masculine or feminine as words. And so the nature of the word Allah makes it a masculine word. But it doesn't mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a gender or the name Allah has a gender or anything like that. And there's another name that we use for Allah, the Zatullah, or that word in itself is feminine. So another word that Allah we use for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Zat. It's actually, I believe it's feminine itself. So both those words are used. Any of the sisters have any questions or? Brother, no. You had something?
Yeah. Just Yawm al-Din. Yawm al-Din.
What's Yawm al-Din?
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear the day of reckoning.
Yeah.
Day of reckoning, or the day of hisab or jaza, the day that you'll have to account, where you'll be given your compensation for what you did in this world. So that's the word deen here. The deen is used in different meanings in the Quran. So it's fi deen al-maliki, it's used for hukm. So it's used in the deen inda Allah Islam. The deen here is different. Deen means the way of life that you're living is only Islam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Hisab, as you said, I think.
Hisab, yeah. Judgment or account.
Because here when I read
Yawm al-Din.
Yawm al-Din means Yawm al-Qiyamah. When you focus on Hisab, Jaza.
Yeah, this thing. Yawm al-Qiyamah, the day of judgment, right? In English it's easy because we say day of judgment. It's the same word. But in Arabic, when you say Yawm al-Qiyamah, that means the day of resurrection. That's not what we're talking about here. The day of resurrection it's when you be resurrected. But here the focus is on the actual accountability that you will have to do before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not talking about the day you will be resurrected, even though it's the same time at the last period that you're going to have to go through. But the focus here is on accountability. The focus here is Malik Yawm al-Din, on the accountability that you're going to have to give to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, but when we say in English, we say day of judgment. So it's the same thing, hisab is judgment. You don't say day of resurrection. Any other questions or comments? Sister Side? No. Yes?
A question. Me? Yeah.
What they had? Okay, we're done. No.
So, like, with, I think, so a sa'a is before that.
Yes, sa'a means the last period of time that will exist on this earth. Yeah, different terminology. So like the sa'a is the last time on this earth where everything will be destroyed. And then there's Isti'aadha, which people will be resurrected, and then there's jaza and hisab, then the accounting. So, I mean, this will all be the last things that happen, but they will happen obviously at different times. So each thing has its own time. Yeah.
And so the focus is on accountability.
Focus here on this surah is on accountability. Yeah. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خير. Salah will be at 9:45, so if you can, please take care.